In a Country Women's Association hall on Western Australia's south coast,
Plan A for us is obviously keeping the live export trade, and you are unfortunately our Plan B, the phase out.
farmers express their anger
We're really good. We're not going to bloody,
and disbelief.
Things. Are we going to deny the rest of the world a food source because it's not such a good thing to do? But anyway.
The federal government is committed to phasing out live sheep exports from Australia by sea after the next federal election.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Warren Snowden.
An independent panel has held a series of public meetings across the sheep-producing regions of the state. The meetings are to consult with people involved in the live sheep export trade.
And certainly my first option is not to phase out live export, full stop.
And have been attended by hundreds of producers, transport operators, shearers and stock agents.
Is Australia and our politicians going to sit back? West Australia's got 3-4 million sheep sitting there on the wharf ready to go. No, you can't do that.
This consultation is not about considering the merits of stopping live sheep exports by sea. Its focus is how the trade should be phased out and when. The cornerstone trade that their businesses and communities have relied upon since the 60s is coming to an end.
This attempt to cripple the sheep industry is not welcomed by most in our industry, and I suggest that you rethink the phase-out idea on exporting and return to Canberra and make strong recommendations to the government that this industry should continue for a period of 8 to 10 years to allow all the industry to adjust.
Looking on is Georgia Smith. She's a farm consultant and with her family has a grain and sheep enterprise 160 kilometres away in Kojonup.
People are bringing a lot of frustration into the room. People are walking in not quite aware that it seems to be a done deal politically, that the live export ban is going to go ahead. They're trying to voice their concerns and try and figure out why this has happened and how it has happened.
Really, it's very unfair.
If Labor is re-elected, it is a done deal. Live exports will end. The panel's convener is former career public servant and Murray-Darling Basin Authority Chief Executive, Philip Glyde.
We've got to describe what the impacts will be of this decision, the economic impacts, the social impacts, the community impacts, how it might impact various sectors that are related to the export sheep sector, so other sheep growing, shearing, grain production, and all of the industries that depend or service those industries. So the shearers, the transporters, the diesel mechanics, what it will mean in the community. So that's our first task, is to do that, describe what the consequence will be. And our second task is really to identify what can be done to offset some of those impacts.
For sheep producer Richard Cool, the trade has underpinned his family sheep and wool enterprises in the Franklin district for more than 50 years.
And I still remember the day when Emmanuel came out and bought some sheep from us. And I remember thinking with great pride when the buyer said to my dad, "Well, John, they're $20 sheep." And we thought all our Christmases had come at once. I think it's essential because it just brings another level of demand for our livestock, and that brings another level of competition, which is essential. You know, governments shouldn't try and interfere with natural processes of demand and supply. If they do, we end up with disasters like we did with the wool trade, for example. So long as the welfare aspect is right, I think let commercial reality sort out the other details.
The independent panel aims to deliver a report to Federal Agriculture Minister Murray Watt by the end of September. The convener understands why the live sheep export trade emerged in WA and its unique farming systems.
The situation in WA in terms of sheep production is so different to the East Coast that It's described to us that you basically have a drought every year because of the Mediterranean climate. The reason the live trade exists is because it's a risk management mechanism. Should the sheep that are produced not be able to find a home, they can be transported overseas. They're just a few examples of how different it is. But we've certainly heard in our public meetings that sense that WA is different and that the communities, the people in the East Coast don't understand.
People do not like this trade. They've seen the inherent welfare problems and they're very supportive of the trade ending.
Animal activists and the federal Labor government believe the trade has lost its social licence, despite the exporters improving animal welfare on ship journeys to the Middle East.
And it's clear that the live export industry, those exporters, do not have the support of the Australian community. Repeated polling shows that the majority of Australians, something like 7 out of 10 Australians, 7 out of 10 Western Australians too, would like to see an end to the live sheep export trade.
Through his transport business, Jeff Miotti has been involved in the trade for more than 3 decades. He's seen improvements in how the sheep are treated.
Animal welfare side of it's had huge changes. Our stock crates are a lot better. We don't put as many sheep on. Our load densities have changed, so the sheep travel a lot better. The feedlots in Perth are a million times better. We used to unload sheep into old dirt pens and they just run out in the paddock with a few feeders and that sort of thing. Now there's really good sheds, first-class facilities with good feed troughs, good water. They're under cover, under shade, out of the sun and the rain.
He's also witnessed the decline of the trade.
I can remember we used to do a boat just about every week. Now we might do one every month at the most. And for 3 or 4 months of the year, that's completely gone. And just WA could really do with the markets. We're running out of abattoir space. It's very hard for the farmers to be able to get rid of their sheep at the moment.
I think it's really important to put this transition into context because we've already been seeing a long-term decline in the proportion of sheep that are exported live versus already go to abattoirs.
In 2017, Australia exported by sea about 1.8 million live sheep. After the Awassi Express disaster, where thousands of sheep died in terrible conditions, a ban on transportation during the Northern Hemisphere summer, combined with lower stocking densities on the ships for the remainder of the year, were introduced. They've contributed to a dramatic decline in the trade. Last year, about 500,000 sheep left our shores.
So we've already had that significant transition into the domestic slaughter trade. And that trade is now worth 6 times what the live export trade is worth. So in terms of the transition, we're already nearly there. We're just at that end point of that 500,000 sheep.
When Minister Watt announced his intentions to shut the live X trade down, grower confidence in the future of the sheep industry in WA was shaken. Sheep prices plunged, and growers have raised concerns that the future of animal welfare on farm will be at risk.
I might get you, if there's almost a whole line, I'll get you to do a special.
Bindi Murray is a third-generation farmer on what used to be her grandparents' property.
So he's got the switch there.
She's a wool producer, sells sheep into the live trade, and produces straw that goes into the fodder used on the export ships.
Because it's really great as a sort of like a pressure relief valve when we get to know whether our season's going to give us a good season or not so good. We know that we've got the ability to move much larger numbers that we can't put through the local processing sector. There's just not enough capacity there. The role that it plays is making our business less risky financially, and it means that we can make sure that we're really driving the business and then spending the money in the local towns. And maximising the number of shearers and shearing shed hands that we've got working in our shed. So that, that flows through to the local community as well. It's one of the things that's very uniquely West Australian, but it actually touches on all of the parts of the national sheep industry. So that's where, people say, oh, I don't directly participate in live export, but vicariously people benefit from it being part of the mix. And so just because people who are decision makers, or even just people the average voter going about their business, just because they're not involved in it or directly benefit, take the time to understand it first.
The panel have taken away some really clear and strong messages that have been put together by, growers, truck drivers, industry representatives, but I think they've left in no uncertain terms about the impact that will be caused through this ban of live export by sea.
Stephen Bolt is a mixed farmer running grain and sheep at Corrigan, about 2.5 hours east of Perth. He also heads an industry group called the Livestock Collective, which for years has fought against ending the live export trade. He argues the loss of the business could backfire on government plans to expand the chilled and frozen meat industry.
Government's claiming that's the answer is more processing. Actually, what we're going to do in removing live export is put the processing sector at risk.
And you've heard that firsthand from people in that industry?
Yeah, look, I've spoken to a lot of people up and down the supply chain. And the processors are people I've spoken to also. And, there is real concern about where the sheep numbers are potentially heading, because I'm not sure that they expected the grower sentiment to be that they were going to walk away from the industry, but that's exactly what's happening on the ground. Is growers are saying, that is it, we are out.